For POS 160, the virtual debate, I'm going to be, this is the rebuttal. I'm going to be responding to Ashley's post about why I believe the U.S. should stay in the Middle East. And I'm going to start off by saying I really like some of the points that you made, especially especially how you brought up the identity issues in the Middle East, especially in places like Iraq. Um, but working off that, so in Iraq in 2003, when the U.S. invaded, it was a Sunni Ba'athist regime led by Saddam Hussein. Sunni. It was a minority party or minority group, and the Shia were the majority, but they were not represented by the government. And George W. Bush, he led this kind of disengagement, hands-off approach. I kind of let them take the wheel eventually, and it didn't work out. Barack Obama, very similar story, and except he set a set withdrawal date. And so after that set withdrawal date, the U.S. Put Hassan al-Maliki in power. He represented the Shia group, which is great. The majority of the people represented, but when the U.S. completely withdrew its troops, his followers began persecuting and massacring the minority Sunni groups, as well as because the U.S. withdrew its troops, they shut down prison camps like Camp Bucca, which held the prisoners from terror groups like Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and some troops from Saddam Hussein's regime. And because all these groups were, they were radicalized by from fighting the U.S., but they were also all Sunni groups, and so once the Iraqi government began persecuting them, it kind of radicalized them even further. It started a new Sunni Ba'athist movement, which we now call ISIS, and I believe that that is directly related to the U.S. Withdrawal of its troops in Iraq. And I will say for your last point, you bring up how the U.S. troops in Iraq, if they're going to be there, they're going to need to be prepared to stay there for decades. And I believe that they are, because especially it's been proven and shown in history that the U.S. doesn't necessarily leave the countries they go to war with. It's you can see with Japan, Germany, Korea, Vietnam, all these places, the U.S. still has a very strong, active military presence, and in the Middle East, it's almost the same way. So, according to Business Insider, there's still 9,000 troops in several bases in Iraq. The U.S. has its entire Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. It's been there since 1995, as well as air bases in Saudi Arabia. Has 15,000 troops in Kuwait, who have all been there since Saddam Hussein invaded the country in the 90s. There's 5,000 troops in the UAE, as well as in Dubai, and there's also military assets and bases in Jordan, and they've been there since 1996. And another one is Israel. There's several bases in Israel, and the U.S. regularly conducts military exercises with the IDF. And I believe all this military presence is it kind of curbs and deters the hostile aggression from these states, especially in the relations with Saudi Arabia and Iran and Israel and all of its neighbors. And like I mentioned earlier, the U.S. has 30,000 troops in Germany. There's thousands of troops in Korea. There's thousands of troops in Japan, as well as the Philippines, Guam, Laos, Vietnam, and that's just been a part of U.S. foreign policy. And I believe so I believe that these troops are specifically deployed here to stay, and I think they should, because it provides a sense of regional stability. And while I will agree with you that nation building should not be a part of U.S. foreign policy, especially in the Middle East, a strong military presence does, one, it provides security, and then two, it provides leverage over aggressive states like Russia, China, Iran, and it's also, like I mentioned, a crucial part of U.S. sovereignty and foreign policy. And so while you make a very reasonable argument, I believe that the U.S. military should stay in the Middle East because that presence provides stability and security that would not be there otherwise.